Parents, if you have a child who is struggling with some sort of chronic neurological challenge, and listen, there's a lot of them. We're talking about things like autism, ADHD, anxiety, sensory processing, seizures, PANS, chronic immune struggles, that whole world. If that is you, if you've got a kid in that category, I bet you I know probably 4 things about you, even if we've never met before. So let's try. Number 1, I bet that you have exhausted all of the support that comes from that traditional medical system, right? The pediatrician, the various specialists. You've gone down that path with not a whole lot of help, not many answers. Number 2, I bet that you have been many times up late at night, Googling, searching, going through Facebook groups, going through Instagram pages, and you are doing a deep dive to truly understand what is the root cause, what are the underlying factors that have led to your kid getting into that situation. Number 3, and this one I can't feel 100% confident on, but it is more and more frequent every day, every year that goes on. I'm willing to bet that you've already done a lot of good stuff. You've gone after major diet changes. You've gone after different detoxes, probiotics, supplements, integrative therapies. You've probably done a lot of good work in that area. And you've made progress, but your kid is still struggling in some capacity. Number 4, and this is one I feel really passionate about. Yes, there's a diagnosis, there's a label that you care about, but what you really care about is the every single day struggles, right? The day-to-day life, that is what matters. That's what affects you, affects your family, affects your kid, and that's what you want help with. So if I'm tracking with you and those do hit for you, and that sounds like you, tune in. This little message is for you, and I have a special invitation that I want to let you know about something going on next week here in Cranberry Township. Listen, that whole journey that we're talking about and all these neurodevelopmental struggles, that's what you'll hear us talk about at Thrive as the perfect storm. And that is the story that really can go all the way back to birth and pregnancy, but it's different traumas, different toxins, different exposures that kids have had that have led to their nervous system and really their development getting stuck in a state of stress, getting stuck in a state of fight or flight that they never really get out of. And when that happens, specifically when it happens in an early phase of life, it really has long-lasting impacts, right? It gets them in fight or flight, and they can never develop and hit those normal milestones and benchmarks with communication, with regulation, with social development that kids are supposed to. And that is so common, right? It's up to 40% of kids who are in that school age realm. 40% of kids are dealing with some sort of chronic immune struggle, which is mind-blowing, right? If you're my age, if you're a parent here, I've got 4 kids myself, you can probably think back and maybe in the classroom growing up, there was a kid, maybe 2 kids who had something happening, right? They were on an inhaler, they had some sort of struggles, and that was an issue back then. It has exponentially increased, right? So there's something going on with our kids' health that isn't being addressed, that is allowing this problem to get worse and worse and worse. And what I want you to understand, parents, is that you need to get off of the specialist merry-go-round that you typically end up on when you have a kid in this category and start asking different questions. You got to realize that all of this is linked together. And I mean that in so many different ways, right? In one sense, it's all linked together in the previous struggles to now, right? We see the colicky, constipated, reflux, ear infections, struggling kiddo as a baby turned into the kid later on with sensory processing challenges, anxiety, behavioral struggles, emotional regulations, and tantrums. Those aren't completely different categories. Those are different checkpoints along the same journey. And that's what's completely missed when we have this traditional approach of what I think of as like a very siloed medical system, right? You've got your ENT specialist if you've got the chronic ear infections and ENT issues. You've got your psychiatric approach if you're dealing with more of the OCD or the ADHD challenges. You've got your neuro if it's the seizures in that world. Very isolated, and those professionals don't really talk to each other, and no one is really looking at why is it taking place. It's a very symptom-driven approach, right? We're looking at how do we mask or manage these various symptoms that your kid is dealing with instead of doing something that's just going to improve their overall wellness, right? If we're chasing symptoms, if we're just trying to get rid of that disease or whatever the name of that challenge or disorder is, the best case scenario is never health. It's just a lack of symptoms, right? There's a difference between no symptoms and health. There's a difference between not being sick and really being at your best. So we've got to flip that paradigm. We've got to look at stuff that's going to improve the overall wellness of a kid instead of just looking at what minimizes those symptomatic challenges. And the other way that this is all connected, anytime we have different issues and disorders touching different body systems, well, we know it can't be attacked and can't be addressed through that isolated siloed approach. It's got to be addressed holistically. The only thing that touches every single one of those areas is the nervous system, right? The nervous system is at the root of all that. If your immune, your gut, your development is affected, it's got to come back to neurology. And you might think the brain when you hear that, right? And of course, the brain is a big part of the central nervous system, but your brain turns into your brain stem, which turns into your spinal cord, and those are one in the same. That is the missing piece that I think so many professionals aren't thinking about, is how that central nervous system regulation component, the fancy word would be dysautonomia, this dysregulated sympathetic, parasympathetic, gas pedal versus brake, that being off is going to touch and affect every single one of these areas. So that's the piece of it that we're obsessed with. That's why the pregnancy, the birth trauma, those early life interventions are so impactful. One, because that sets the stage for development from minute one of life. And as a newborn, the most susceptible, the most prone to damage and injury is this upper neck region, that brainstem center. That is where that main calming, wellness, parasympathetic brake pedal side of your nervous system lives. The vagus nerve, if you are a parent who's been deep dive Googling into all of these Facebook groups, you've heard about the vagus nerve and you've heard about how it is so key and it's such a centerpiece for everything else neurologically and developmentally. That vagus nerve comes out of the base of your skull, right by these first couple cervical vertebrae. So if you've got some birth intervention, birth trauma, birth stress, that area is very likely damaged and impacted. So we've got to address this differently, right? We can't just focus on the symptoms, the secondary, the downstream piece of it. You got to start looking at the interconnectedness of challenges if you really want your kid to be at their best. And that is the only thing, or what I should say is pediatric chiropractors are the only people who are asking those sort of questions and who are addressing these sort of challenges, right? That is what we're obsessed with, is the nervous system first. That's why our exam and our evaluation is neurologically based, right? We have our insight scans. They're going to measure how well your nervous system is functioning, how well your kid is connected, what that brain and body communication is like, and if they are in fact stuck in fight or flight, so we can put together a game plan to undo that and to get them back on track. Listen, this is just the tip of the iceberg, a little teaser into what is going on here. There is so much more that we could do talking through the science, the neurology. Parents, if you want to dig into that, if you want to learn more about that topic and how this all is connected and how pediatric chiropractic can really be the key unlock for kids, you have to join us at The Perfect Storm. It's happening November 14th, Thursday night at the Sports Grill here in Cranberry Township. We'll provide dinner, we'll provide drinks. You just got to show up, bring a friend, bring a spouse, and show up ready to hear the information that, and this is tricky, it's the information you've never heard before, but at the same time, it's nothing new, right? All it is connecting the dots between what you already know and how it can be related to your kids. So please join us there. We would love to have you. We've got, if you're here at the office, we've got these tickets all around the office, right? Grab one of these for yourself, give them to a friend, scan the QR code there, use the link here in this video. Please show up. Cannot wait to meet you there and do whatever we can to help your family thrive.